And a very warm welcome to everybody on the Sunrise Safari. We're out here looking over a very misty Djuma concession in the Greater Kruger National Park of South Africa. You're watching Safari Live, and my name is Ralph Kirsten, and on the camera we've got Seb. Morning, Seb. Now, please don't forget to join us on the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter and on the YouTube live chat. Send us your questions and your comments and join us on this interactive game drive. Now, as you can see, this morning is a rather strange, a very misty morning. It's about 16 degrees Celsius, around about 60 degrees Fahrenheit, and we've got lots of overhanging cloud, a little bit of mist rising up from all those drainage lines there. But I'm excited to be out this morning, and I'm sure James is as well. He's out on vehicle 2, out there somewhere looking for some animals. And also we've got Steve out on foot. So a lovely team that we have. We're all going to be heading out trying to find whatever we can. My first port of call, I think, is going to be that of elephants, because there's nothing more enthralling than watching elephants in the mist. So that's my idea for this morning. We've just picked up on some fresh tracks, so I'm going to head towards Twin Dams and also to Treehouse Dam, and then we'll make our way towards Chitwa, because we've got all sorts of gizmos and gadgets that we'll put out, and also have a look over that Chitwa Dam in the mist. Also very picturesque in this kind of atmosphere. So join us as we head on out. I think it's time to get moving and see if we can find any of these animals mobile after the long night. And while we head towards Treehouse Dam and see if there's any elephants about and if there's anything else, little critters running around, let's head you off to James and see what's his plans for the morning.
Good morning, everybody. What we're up to is trying to remain bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, because one always must be such in the morning. One must pretend one is not still filled with sleep. My name is James Henry. As you can see, we have got Senzo on camera. Senzo, Senzo is dressed in such a manner that you'd think it wasn't 61 degrees Fahrenheit and 16 degrees Celsius. You would think he was about to embark on a prolonged expedition to the South Pole. It's not that cold, it is fairly chilly. My plan this morning is to head out towards where Thandi was last night, see if we can find her again. I haven't spent any time with her and Tlalamba since my return from leave, some 3 weeks ago now. So that is our plan today. Please do talk to us, of course, using the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter and the YouTube chat stream. Wonderful. Well, I'm unsurprised by Anna Marie, who says she was hoping to find Thandi and Tlalamba. Yes, I think that's probably everyone's fervent wish just about every day these days. There's something about a small cat that everybody finds very much appealing. Anyway, the last I was in that area was yesterday evening, when Stivovo, in his attempt to return home, drove into a hole just next to where Thandi and Tlalamba were the day before, or previously in the afternoon, and he actually managed to upend the car. He'll tell you about this. He managed to upend the car such that the back left wheel was completely off the ground. So let's go over to him and he can tell you all about his misadventures in the dark.
Good morning, good morning. It is a beautiful morning here in Djuma in the Sabi Sands. My name is Steve Falcon-Richard. I'm joined by VM on camera, and we have Rexon with us on walk. And yes, we are bushwalking, if you didn't realize that. And we are going to take a sort of a bumble sort of towards the south, see if there's any tracks, and then take it from there. I don't know what James is talking about last night. I was following Thandi and Tlalamba, and I mentioned, I think briefly, that forgive me if I suddenly disappear down a hole, and next thing we went off there, and next thing I disappeared down a hole, and the entire right wheel went in the hole, and the entire back left wheel was about this high off the ground. So quite tricky, but James came and gave us a hand. We pushed the car down and we were able to drive it out. But when you got 2 wheels off the ground, it's impossible to drive. These Land Rovers need at least 3 wheels on the ground. So, yep, no one got injured, even though Seb nearly fell off. I did not fall off. I held on sternly, but needless to say, we lost those 2 cats moving through the long grass, and hopefully James doesn't get stuck in a hole there this morning. Well, ideally he'll be able to see where he's going. It's a very eerie morning. I think it's 16 degrees Celsius, about 62 degrees Fahrenheit. It's relatively cool. There's a nice cloudy cover on the sky, a little blanket which is keeping in the warmth of last night. It's not that cold, but there's not a single animal in this open clearing, which is kind of bizarre. Kind of bizarre, don't you think, Vildy? So, well, I have not been benched, if that's why you're asking, folks. It's just my time to walk. We were driving very slowly, so the car didn't smash anything. It just fell into a very big hole in the long grass. So, but yeah, I think we're going to check this entire area, because normally there's Impala, wildebeest, some zebra. There's not a single thing. Okay, well, it seems as Ralph has found some early morning raptors. Let's go over to him.
Well, everyone, I thought it was ideal for us to stop here next to this dead tree with this kind of atmosphere that we've got this morning, with the mist rolling through, and we've got these vultures at the top of this dead tree. It looks like an old knobthorn, and just look at that setting. Very pretty indeed. These are a couple of white-backed vultures. And that one there, I think he's a little bit cold. He's put his head, I think, on his back or behind one of his wings. Either that or he's a headless vulture. And he seems to be able to perch there all right without his head. Oh, there it is. And look at that very clear hook on the end of the bill. Being able to tear at the flesh. I wonder why these guys are around. Now, Carol, I don't think that there is any rain on the forecast. However, the forecasts have been wrong before. This is a bit of the tail end of a big system that moved through Cape Town and then came up the sort of east coast of South Africa and pushed a little bit inland. So we're just getting the tail end of a cold front. So it is quite cloudy. It's quite misty this morning, but I do think that that'll burn off as the morning progresses. So it has been a little bit cooler than usual in the last couple of days. As I say, just the tail end of that front moving through, and then it will shift out into the ocean and off it goes. But, well, I'm wondering if there's not a reason why these vultures are around, or if they've just decided to come and perch on this old dead tree, which is often the case. They like to use dead trees like that. It's perfect for them, nice and exposed, but not a lot of leaves, and also nice thick branches for them to perch on. Now, sometimes they would be coming together like this if there was a carcass around, but it's not always necessary that that's the case. They do still need to perch up during the evening, and when it's very cold like this and quite misty, they'll spend quite a bit of the morning sitting up on this dead tree because there's no thermals. Now, Marcy, well, vultures don't always just come around when there's dead things around. They are obviously looking for dead things, but they need to still be around to find those dead things. So, and they also, as I say, they do need to perch up somewhere during the evening, and this is a perfect vulture resting spot. Nice old dead tree like that. But as I was saying, with this misty morning, you often find the vultures have rested up because there's no heat and there's no thermals. So, it's quite difficult for them to fly at this time. It looks like it might be doing a bit of a casting there. Nope. I think it's just looking to go back to sleep. So yes, on mornings like this, very misty, you often find the vultures perched up like this because they need to expend a lot of energy to fly. They've got to literally flap all the way to fly at the moment. There's no thermals. There wouldn't be any to speak of. Maybe later as the morning progresses and these clouds start burning off, you might see them then getting out and circling, trying to catch the thermals and get some height. But yeah, so also another thing that we need to be aware of is on a misty morning like this, you try not scare vultures off their perch, because they really need to expend a lot of energy in order to fly because of there being that lack of heat. So you don't particularly want to do that because they're expending more than necessary. A little bit of grooming, etc. going on. There can be in some species that pair are monogamous, they pair for life, but mostly with vultures, yeah, they are monogamous. They can be seasonally monogamous, and if one partner dies, they will take another one. So there's a bit of mixture between the different species. Now, this white-backed vulture is probably the most common of all the vultures. We do also get the lappet-faced here, which is probably the second most. Cape vulture, that's one that probably did just be distributed in this area, but they're one of the rarer vultures now. And also heading down the coast a little bit into Drakensberg, that's where you get all sorts of different vultures there. The lamachai, the bearded vulture, very special in what they do, taking bones and things up to high altitudes above the ground and dropping them onto rocks, accessing the marrow inside there. Palm nut vultures that you also get up the coast, and they almost feed exclusively on vegetable matter. Obviously, if carcasses are available, they will have some, but fish and nuts, and so quite a strange vulture that. But wonderful to see the vultures out and about. They do get hammered quite badly if there's any kind of poisoning around or anything like that. Mr. T, the only predator or problem that vultures get in the wild would be sort of from lions and hyenas and possibly even jackals around a carcass. So they would maybe attack the vultures because of irritation or competition around that food source. But generally there's not particularly a predator that will actively hunt them. It's just those ones that would kill them for competition. But as I say, they form a very important part of the ecosystem, very adept in helping to decompose these carcasses, getting in there, ripping out all the last little bits of meat inside there, and then even assisting in spreading the bones and helping it just go down completely. So, I think I'm going to start to move along towards Treehouse Dam. We'll leave these vultures to rest up on this tree here. Excuse me. Hopefully as I drive along I don't scare them. I'm going to try my best. I want them to stay on their roost and keep their energy. But I think let's head on over to James in the meantime and see how his morning is getting on.
Well, it's getting on, I suppose. We're doing our level best out here. We haven't found any tracks of anything. Let's just have a look down over the misty valley there. Senzo, if you'd be so kind to extricate yourself from your warm blanket and show us the valley down towards the west. It's quite pretty with the mist. Now I'm going to shut up briefly and you can listen to the dawn chorus. I always find in winter that it is very sort of loudly dove-like, especially in the valleys. Now we do have a problem with one of the receivers on our towers, the technical details of which I cannot fathom and therefore you will not be able to understand. But basically it means we only have the microphone in my head. You heard that, tap, tap, tap. And the ambient microphone, which would normally pick up the dawn chorus, is therefore almost superfluous. Rectify the problem as soon as possible. That's why you can't hear a great deal of birdsong. But basically it sounds like a great string section of doves down in the great valley of the Umluamati, calling, singing their songs. Unfortunately, I do not hear the distressed yell of an animal being set upon by Thandi or Tlalamba, so we shall keep on going. Are you ready, Senzo? No, he's just doing an artistic zoom out. There we go. Very nice, Senzo. Superb zoom out there. Excellent job. Scent mark? You say that it looks like the trees have got some frost on them. It does look like that. If you come from a cold place, I imagine that that's precisely what it looks like. Frost does not occur here. It probably has once or twice in history, but it certainly doesn't occur often, and definitely not at 61 degrees Fahrenheit or 16 degrees Celsius. It's just mist that you can see down there. There is no frost. And none of the trees that grow here, or very few of them, in fact, will grow up on the high veld or the highlands of South Africa where there is frost, because they are simply completely frost intolerant. So there is no frost here. And in fact, I've always found it very interesting that there is no word in the Shangaan language for ice or for snow, because it's just never snowed or been icy here. Isn't that interesting? I think that's interesting. Senzo, in Zulu there is, correct? In snow. What is snow? Ikwa. Senzo is unable to speak at the moment. He comes from a warmer area. We'll get him to say the words when it warms up a bit. Reptilian research, I disagree with you wholeheartedly. You say that Senzo would enjoy the frosty morning there in Salt Lake City. I can tell you for free that you wouldn't get Senzo out of the house in anything less than 18 degrees Celsius or so, and that would be a push. So were it to be below zero, forget it. Jared's buddy, you want to see what Senzo is wearing. Senzo, would you like to just do a little walk around the front of the car? No? I'll tell you what, I'll take a picture of him with my phone. In fact, he shouldn't move. Let's let him not move because he's so comfortable with his blankie on. Are you ready, Senzo? We'll take a picture of two examples of humanity. David, look up. Aha, there we are. Okay. Right, there you can see David on the left, dressed normally. Senzo on the right, dressed for a prolonged expedition to the North Pole. Sorry about that glare, that's off the presenter light. Please take note, sorry Senzo, can you go back in there? Please take note of this blanket here. You see the blanket? That blanket comes off his bed. Yes. Okay, now you can see David is all smiles because it's really not that cold. That's actually quite a nice photograph. I think I'll keep that. It really isn't that cold, everyone. I feel the cold horribly and I don't think it's that cold. This is the area in which Thandi was yesterday. I'm just quickly checking the road to see if there are any tracks. I don't see any. I see largely just hyena activity. Anyway, we'll just potter around here and see what we can come up with. Ah, Julie, you want to know if there's a Tsonga word for hail? There must be, because there is hail. I've experienced hail here. I don't know what it is, but we can find out. Unfortunately, I have a Swahili slash Maasai slash what else have you got new, David? David is a various mix of Bantu from sort of Eastern Africa, and so he doesn't have the Tsonga word for hail, and nor does Senzo, who has so far failed to learn much Shangaan since his arrival here. Alrighty, I'll keep an eye on the road down here for footprints, which of course Stephen Falconbridge is leaving as we speak.
It is very wet on the ground, and you can see the droplets of water accumulating on this silver cluster leaf. And those of you who were with me in the studio last week or the week before, when I showed you the silver cluster leaf under the microscope, you could see all those tiny hairs. And so the hairs not only trap heat, they also trap the moisture, so that aids, I suppose, in a little bit of sort of transpiration efficiency, I wonder. But a beautiful morning. Everything is dewy. The change from the night to the morning is that transition, and our feet get very wet. But we have to see something, though. I have gone and oiled my shoes, but you need to see what Wildebeest has done with his shoes. They're already coming undone, but he has gaffer taped his shoes properly to keep the water out, and it's not working that well at the moment. It seems to be coming apart, but it's a proper bush fix, and he's done a marvelous job of that. So walking off road, it is very, very wet, and we're not even walking through long grass. But it's a lovely time of day indeed, to just be meandering. We're hoping to find some tracks. Wildebeest and myself saw some leopard tracks the other night coming along Philemon's cut line, which is just down here, and there was a small track following. And it was either a civet or it was a leopard cub. We don't know. We have no idea. So Rexon's with us now. We're going to check this drainage system quite well. Can you imagine we got a new leopard on the property with a cub we don't know about? Can you imagine? Can you imagine that? We'll call it Steve Wildebeest or something. Eh? Does that sound good? Well, I'm only kidding. We would never name it that. That's way too long. But we're going to come down. This is the drainage depression down here that Thandi had her cub for the entire January. So it is a really good place to have a leopard cub. But I'm only assuming. I have no idea. But when he mentioned to Brent and James the other day, they got very excited. Can you imagine? And I asked Rex now this morning, and he said, well, this is an open system. There could be anything here. And let's hope we find a beautiful new leopard with a cub. We're not going to assume anymore, with the point of maybe making us idiots. Dynamite, this mist happens as winter sort of approaches, and you sort of get that evening sort of afternoon temperature transitioning into the morning. This can be a daily occurrence in the winter. It's just because the hot air obviously goes up and the cold air sinks, and as it sinks we get a lowered temperature here in these depressions, and we call the dew point. The dew point is where rain is formed, but it also causes the condensation because the temperatures dropped a huge amount from last week or the week before. So down in these valley depressions there's a lot of moisture or in the air, and the temperature's lower, so it turns the gas into moisture, and that's why the dew and the mist everywhere is so prevalent this time of year. And on we go. Well, let's go over to Ralph and see what mischievous things he's up to this morning.
Yeah, you know me, I like to be a little bit mischievous, but just heading down here towards and I'm very excited because I'm sure it's going to be a lovely setting with a little bit of mist, and well, we'll have a look at it from different angles, and we'll see if anything's coming down to drink. It seems those elephants, it didn't head in the direction that we're coming now, and we didn't see them. There was nothing at Twin Dams, so we poked in there, but there wasn't anything happening there for now. So we're going to come down here to Chitwa Dam, watch the sun come up as it's slowly poking its way through the clouds there. So I think it's going to be really pretty. And then we'll have a look around the airstrip, see what is hanging around, what's lurking. And then maybe after that we'll head towards, well, if there's nothing too much going on this side, then we'll head up towards Biffel's Hook Dam. Maybe those lions are still around. We'll see what else we can spot. Hopefully a buffalo or two in between, maybe an elephant, and whatever else. It's all about what we can find. What is the bush going to show us this morning? I'm sure the hippos are going to be full of energy. Carol, I'm not too sure about Kachava and her cub. I think that was a little bit further south, if I'm not mistaken, that she was oh, look at that beautiful sunrise, Seb. So Kachava and her cub, I know that yesterday on Torchwood they said there was a female leopard with a kill with a cub. I don't know if it was Kachava. I was asking the rangers around, and they couldn't tell me which leopard it was, so it might be her. I'm not quite sure, but I'll try and find out, and then I'll let you know. Look at that beautiful sunrise coming up over that riverine vegetation, just on the other side of Chitwa Dam, where there's the sort of drainage that comes into the dam. So not the drainage, the sort of the little riverine area that leads into the dam itself. Look at those clouds coming across the sun. Absolutely stunning. Very, very pretty. Origin, I agree with you. That is very beautiful indeed. And we're just, I'm just looking down towards the dam. There's all sorts happening down there. There's some Impala around. Just listening out. There's oxpeckers as usual, because they've got some nests here. I can hear the ever-present Cape turtle dove. Goo-goo-roo, goo-goo-roo. Hearing that dawn chorus. And nice to hear the hippos moving around a little bit there. Oh, is that a fish eagle there, I think? I'm pretty sure it is. There he is, yes. One of the couple that stay here next to the dam. A resident pair. Very pretty. And look at that color behind him as well. Very, very beautiful. And the birds all starting to get up and get moving, get busy proclaiming their territories in the early morning. And just like the insects and arthropods yesterday, very quiet on the bushwalk, because a lot of insects are going dormant now, or going into their sort of egg or larval phase, or pupating, etc. So, you know, underneath the sand, underneath the ground, in hidden areas. Well, the same too with a lot of the birds. We've lost all of the migratory birds at present, so the space has been expanded for the resident birds, all the migratory birds having dispersed, gone back to where they came from. And so I think the resident birds get to breathe a little bit of a sigh of relief, because they're not fighting over so much, over the same space with so many more birds. So for the time being, heading into winter, the conflict, I think, is definitely minimized at this present moment in time. Autumn into winter, and then as spring hits, well, we have a lot more birds arriving, and everybody competing for the same amount of space than they were in the winter time. So it's all exciting. It's lovely to have all the birds around, the migratory birds returning, but it does put a lot of pressure on the residents. It's almost like us down at the coast, when we surf on our local breaks, and then when the holidays come, all the traveling surfers arrive, and we're all then fighting for that same break where there would be 5 of us. Now all of a sudden there's 30 of us, and while it does get a little bit edgy in the water, there's tempers flare, sometimes there's a little bit of conflict, and it can spill over a bit, and I liken that a little bit to the returning of the migratory birds. So let's move down a bit further to the dam and see what the hippos are up to. Sure, they're going to be full of beans after their night foraging and grazing. Here comes some guinea fowl down towards the water, and the Egyptian geese flying in. And sometimes when it's quite misty like this and cool outside, the water can actually be quite nice and warm. And while I get just up to a nice position here and see what's the best spot to view these hippos from, let's head on over to James with a lovely big bird.
A lovely big bird it is, the African hawk eagly. And I cast some aspersions over its good looks the other day. I said perhaps it wasn't as attractive as some of the others because its head looks a little bit squished. I'm going to stand by that, actually. I know that in some way casting aspersions on any of the animals' looks out here is often frowned upon by our very loyal viewers who take great offence to any such slight. But I'm going to stick with this one. For me, I think there are better looking eagles. Head-wise. What do you think, Senzo? You just think he's beautiful. Yes, I did learn that lesson, Lisa, thank you, when I called Karula on first meeting her pug-faced. Well, the storm of abuse that came down the Twitterverse was quite vicious. It was Lou from FC who was explaining that. I then met Shadow, who of course was Tundi's sister and littermate. I dared not say anything about the fact that, what she looked like. It really was quite an eye-opener. I realized very quickly then that the leopards and their looks were not to be questioned in any shape, way or form. Anyway, this African hawk eagle is one of the pair that lives not far from here in a nest. And Carol, you make the comment, a face only a mother could love. I mean, look, I don't think that this, certainly in Tundi's case that was true, not Tundi's case, in Shadow's case that was true. But in this case, I'm just saying that, something like a martial eagle looks just a lot more regal about the jowls than this fellow does. I think I'm going down a road that I probably shouldn't be going down. I'm going to get myself into big trouble. Now, we don't have a great deal of marshland here, and so YouTube viewer, the chances of us finding harriers here are small. But in theory, we could find an African marsh harrier, and we certainly, when we used to drive on Cheetah Plains, we used to find harriers there from time to time. But we won't find nearly the harrier diversity that David, for example, is used to in the Masai Mara. And that is simply on account of the fact that we don't have the right habitat. They prefer the... just trying to find a picture of one for you quickly. They far prefer the marshlands that are inundated with water, so that they can sort of harrier across them. Now, I remember many times when I've flown in and out of these areas, you find that in the heat of the day, when the air is thin, aeroplanes take quite a long time to take off. They need to really use the whole of the runway. Whereas when it's thick like this in the morning, they tend to take off earlier. And Donna, the opposite kind of applies to the birds here. While certainly they can fly in this weather, and even that vulture can fly in this weather, they don't obviously use a huge amount of speed to get their lift. They need lift off the ground in the form of thermals. That really helps them. And so in misty, cold weather like this, that will sort of... what will it do? It won't quite soak their feathers, but it will certainly make them wet. It is definitely more difficult for them to fly than when it's warm. And the vultures, which rely on soaring, will find it particularly difficult. But the eagles, not quite so much, and I think the smaller the bird is, the less affected it is by the temperature and the atmospheric pressure. There is no sign of any kind of alarm calling anything here, so let's continue down the road and see what else we have. Dynamite's obviously been watching for a while and has seen birds opening their wings for various reasons, and you're wondering if the African hawk eagle there will hold its wings out to cool or to conserve heat. Not seen them doing either of those two things. I think if it got really hot it might open its wings out slightly, but in fact it probably wouldn't do that because then it would expose more surface area to heat. So I'm going to say no, I don't think it probably does. Vultures do it much more to apparently allow the feathers to realign. So they sit with their wings out like that to allow the feathers to realign. No, I don't think it's got a hugely important thermoregulatory reason behind it. And of course the darters do it to dry off. Cormorants the same. Ooh. Sounds quite exciting. Apparently Stephen has something known as opening ears.
Here we found a small breeding herd of elephants. She's definitely spotted us. There's no wind at all. But we don't have too much cover here. So we're going to slowly just go backwards. Yeah, let's go back fully. Trying to figure out what's going on. She's busy feeding, which is a good sign. But we don't have really too much in the way of elevation or cover. So with a breeding herd, it's best to rather just be cautious. Get a bit of a visual if you can. Don't tempt fate. They are relaxed. I don't think she actually knows we're here, but you can see the youngsters behind. Her eyes are very soft, but they're slowly coming in this direction. Oh, she's got a short trunk that's probably from an old snare injury, which is very sad. But it's amazing how resilient elephants can be. I've seen elephants with a trunk half the size. They're still able to do most of their things. Yeah, but it is a small breeding herd. They are coming this direction. Because we don't have too much cover, we might have to move out shortly, but let's just give it another minute. Very exciting to have elephants on foot. It was so amazing, we didn't even see them. We suddenly heard this branch break. Short trunk herd puma, yes it must be. Okay, they're coming straight towards us, so we're going to back away to a safe distance so as not to get into any trouble. We're going to stay here with these ellies. We've just found a termite mound here, which would be quite safe for us. But while we do that, let's go and see how Ralph's getting on at Chitwa Dam.
Yes, so from one group of big animals to another big group of big animals, we've got the hippos here at Chitwa Dam. And how wonderful it is to spend time with them. I really love hippos to bits. I love their call, and it's really, together with the African fish eagle, the lions, jackals, hyenas, it's just something that really reminds me of home and Africa, and makes me, just feel a part of the place, and something that I miss always when I leave the continent. But the birds are also flitting about there. There's a green-backed heron just above this hippo that's exposing himself. There we are. A little bit of calling there. Obviously a little bit early for him to be fishing just yet. Maybe not, but normally the time for proclamation of territory after the long, dark night. There we go. And the sun's just moving in between the patchy clouds, so we're getting intermittent orange and blue glows, and then it goes a bit grey, and we've got all sorts happening with the colour. It's ever changing, but it is very pretty here and a lovely setting. The hippo's exposing itself a bit more now. It's quite shallow over there. I thought it was a bit deeper than that, but maybe just next to that tree. Maybe there was an old termite mound, termiteria, that's sort of raised there, and then off it goes down to the sides. And there's quite a few of the oxpeckers also sitting on the back of one of these hippos, flitting backwards and forwards there. There we are. It looks like they're also having a little bit of a feed on some of the old wounds of the hippo. Oh, well, everyone, very exciting. It seems like Steve has been able to reposition with those elephants, and these hippos aren't going anywhere, so let's go back to him.
Yes, we have. And the short trunk female is about to hit our tracks on the road there. And this might change her behavior. We've managed to find ourselves a termite mound just behind us, so we've got a safe escape route. The purpose of being out here, it's not to influence animals. They're walking in our direction. If need be, we need to avoid them. See, so she's coming this way. She's definitely smelt our feet now. You don't want to be running through the bush. As cowboys, have escape route. It's for the animal's safety and our safety. We're not all about being brave out here. Obviously, it's amazing to have elephants on foot like this. You can't really see her. She's just behind this bush. But she stopped right where we were standing. She's trying to figure out where we are. And you can see how the herd has changed their behavior. See, their heads are up. They've all gotten into a close, tight-knit group because there's been a message signaled that, hey, there's fresh human tracks here. They can smell us. Now they're trying to figure out who we are, what we're doing. But that big female there is busy nursing her calf, so she's not too disturbed. And they're not showing any signs of distress. If a herd is not happy with people and they've smelled that track, you will see everything change very quickly in their behavior. Their eyes are all still very soft. They're going to walk right past us here, so I think we might just have to retreat up onto the termite mound. It's all about being safe, folks. There we go. Yeah, we're good. There, that female's showing the warning signs. Her head was up. Look at the tail. They've officially spotted us now. You see how they've changed their behavior, folks? Now, you don't want to be in the way of that. We've got an escape route. They've got plenty of escape routes. We're safe now. The elephants are moving away to keep themselves safe. But you can see how, because they spotted us, we moved a bit more into the open. We're elevated now on the termite mound. The entire behavior changed. They've got an innate fear of people. They've evolved with us on the landscape in the savannah for a very long time. And that's what breeding herds do, because they've got youngsters. When they come across people tracks, they behave like that. It's perfectly normal. But it's important to have a safety escape. Romit, the reason the termite mound helps is, first of all, it changes the size of us. Ideally, if we'd positioned ourselves before, and the elephants were walking past and we were sitting down on here and blended in with the background, they probably would have walked past without any notice. But we came up maybe a little bit later than we should have, and we're standing tall, so that is almost a threatening response to them. So ideally, if we'd come up and sat down, it probably would have been a different story. But the elephants really struggle to go uphill. They'd rather take the easy route, so they wouldn't come running up the termite mound to get us, so to speak. That's not what they're after. It's all about defending their youngsters. And by us physically moving up a termite mound and sitting down, we take away that threat element. But we moved up a little bit late, as I said, and ideally we should have sat down. But next time, you saw how that behavior changed. So when I was training lots of my Trail Scout students, you'd always come, move up, sit down somewhere, and the elephant sees that threat disappear. But now I've just become a very much taller human being. But they've moved off only about 40 yards, and the youngster's nursing again, so they're quite relaxed. But it's just, early in the morning, they didn't smell us, there's no wind, what to speak at all, and then they came across these very fresh tracks. They can smell us on the ground, and they don't know what our intentions are, so that changes their behavior. Bongi, if an elephant charges on foot, you have to stand your ground. You can't turn and run. It helps to make a noise. But yeah, you've got to just be aware of them. You've got to know that they're there before they know you're there. That's the idea. And by being on an elevated spot or having something to cover yourself is the best way forward. Rocks, a fallen log, drainage, depression, anything like that. Okay, so it seems like the other feet are coming back. Okay, so we're going to take a seat now. The herd seems to be coming back from the other side. So Vildy's going to try to take a seat if he can. And let's just sit here and wait and see what they do. He does have a very big metal backpack on. Makes it very difficult to sit. Okay, so we're just going to give a moment of silence as you watch these ellies approach. So when elephant are feeding, they're quite relaxed. First thing an elephant does when it's not happy, it stops feeding. You might get what we call displacement feeding. An elephant sort of grabs grass or branches and misses, kind of like grabs it but it's not watching it at all. That is a sign that it's irritated, but cows don't do. I've never seen a cow do displacement feeding. Their behavior changes and the whole herd responds, as what we saw there. They all moved off without a word, without seemingly any word. It's a beautiful morning. We perched on top of a termite mound. The elephants are in a 90-degree arc around us here. Okay, well, we're going to stay right here, in place, see if they come any closer. And let's go over to James, see if he's managed to find Tundi.
No, I think we'd know about it if I'd managed to find Tundi, everybody. I'd be whooping and screaming with joy. We came to where the kill was yesterday, and then there's a little kind of, half track that goes back out of this block. What are you hitting the vehicle for? Sorry, there's quite a lot of dirt and leaves on Senzo's seat. He doesn't like that very much. I'm afraid we've had no further sign, and so now we're going to go back out of the block. And while we're doing that, we're looking at every termite mound to see if perhaps there isn't a spotted gold delight sitting on the top, trying to see what's going on around here. But really, this grass is so very long that it's nigh on impossible unless you really get lucky. So we'll make our way out and then we'll head down towards Buffelshoek Dam and see what's happening down there, which is up in the northeast corner. A lot of booby traps in here, which are invisible. Let's have a look at this tropical tent web spider. And in fact there are two species of spider there. If we can get out and show you. Ooh, lovely smell. Oh, hemizygia is what I can smell. Beautiful flower. Aromatic herb. So here is the tropical tent web spider. This is the one that looks like an upside down tent or circus net. And there's the egg sac in the middle, and it's just caught a lot of dew. But living on the web, or right next to it, and using some of the tropical tent web spiders, what would we call them, support threads or knockdown threads, is a minute little orb spider. You see that? Yeah? Now that orb spider, which makes its web like that, as an orb, is not even in the same family as the tropical tent web spider. And it's no more than 1 millimeter across and living very comfortably, or probably completely ignorantly, on the tropical tent web spider's knockdown threads. Isn't that cool? And as I've often said to the arachnophobes amongst you, if you ever want to know how many spiders there are, you come out on a misty morning like this as the sun comes up, and you notice how many thousands and thousands of spiders there are all over the place. This hemizygia smell that I can smell is, oh, here's the actual plant. Can you believe it? Is it hemizygia? It is hemizygia. There's hemizygia. It's quite closely related to some of the osmum species. I think this is it. And it smells like sort of, this is not going to sound very nice, but it smells like herbaceous chocolate. And I just think it's delicious. Makes me think of holidays. Anyway, there we go. That's hemizygia. Let us continue trying to make our way out onto the road. As you can see, it's not exactly a clear path. Senzo, are you warming up yet? He says he's getting there. He's now actually able to speak, which is fantastic. Because at the beginning he had lost the power of speech entirely. Now, one would expect a cat to come towards slightly shorter areas like this. But what would be very useful right now is some kind of eye in the sky.
Yes, everyone, and while we're still sitting here next to Chitwa Dam, watching the hippos go about their morning kerfuffling, yeah, just argy-bargy, there's all sorts going on. But I tell you what, we've also got our eye in the sky. Maybe we should see from a bird's eye view exactly what's going on here around Chitwa Dam. So I'm just checking which view we're looking at, because we are looking at hippos in the water, but we also have the eye in the sky. So I'm just wondering which view you guys are seeing. Okay, it's confirmed. We are up with the eye in the sky. Look at that, everybody. Wonderful bird's eye view over the dam. A lot of water here in the dam at present, which is very good news after a decent amount of rain towards the end of summer. and well, at least it's replenished all the thirsty soils and allowed for the animals to have more space, especially the hippos down there in the water, in the dam itself. Yvette, I agree with you. It is quite lovely, isn't it? And well, you can see there a little bit of the pods of hippos. This is probably the main area where, or the dominant bull of this Chitwa Dam stays, and then we've got a couple of youngsters in amongst them as well, and they're all just, as I said, probably come down from their grazing during the evening. Now they're resting up, doing a little bit of just re-establishing who's where in the hierarchy. It's lovely to get a different perspective. This is the first time I've been on board with the drone, so I haven't really gotten a perspective like this. So it's all new for me as well. It's very interesting. Nancy, yes, I do believe that island has pretty much been there since the inception of this Chitwa Dam. It has been a little bit of it has been dammed, this drainage area, and it wouldn't obviously. It's not totally natural. So, but I do believe that has been a raised section ever since that the dam wall was built to just block off this water a little bit and maintain some of this water in the area. And I'm sure there would have been some hippos in the little pools and things that the river did create, but this has now allowed for a lot more hippos to be able to live in this particular area. And that little island there is home to some of the crocodiles that like sunning themselves on. And, Seb was telling me that it's Vladimir that likes hanging there, but now we're going to the other camera, and there we've got a different perspective from the exact same island. And that's where Vladimir, the big crocodile resident, likes to hang out there on the little sand banks, sunning himself, trying to thermoregulate. We saw him the other day. But this morning, very cool. You might find a little bit later in the morning that a lot of the crocodiles will be out trying to get some sun, trying to warm up, get some energy, and off they go back into the water, maybe going to fish for some catfish. Paula, I'm not sure on the exact numbers of the hippo population in South Africa, but they are pretty much just in the game reserves. Because of their dangerous nature, they are now only confined to protected areas. You don't really have them wandering around in any of our rivers. I'm sure we probably used to have them in the Orange River, the Vaal River, and in all the small little river systems, and even going down the coast. But now, as I say, only in those natural protected areas. So I don't think that their numbers are tiny, but obviously a lot smaller than what naturally there should be. Now, let's head back to Steve on foot. Very exciting. Those elephants are on the move.
Yes, well, we've lost the elephants. They've walked behind us now. And we don't want to move too much because Wildebeest has taken off his backpack. But we are still surrounded by them, but they're all on the other side of the termite mound. Not too bothered by us. Not too bothered by us. There they go feeding. Only about 20 meters away. You can see how they've all stopped. They've smelt something. Probably our residual smell in the air. Still feeding though, so they're not too concerned. But they definitely, the thing is, what I think happened is they got a surprise from us over there. They could back into the bushes. It's been feeding and has walked right past the base of the termite mound. And off they go. And within a few minutes, they're going to be completely disappeared. I just love how quietly they move. And we didn't even know they were there earlier until we heard a branch just go. That's what we heard. Did you hear that? Branch breaking. And suddenly we're in the midst of a breeding herd. So they seem to be heading down towards Treehouse Dam, so we'll see how we go there. VM's now on top. Just get the last residual sort of movements of them as they move away from us. Wildebeest is now on top of the termite mound. Just took a good visual there, Vildy. There they go. So awesome to have elephants back on Djuma. And you can see that the seasons are changing. They're starting to mix their diet now. They're still feeding on a lot of grass, but you can see that one individual is now busy feeding on the red bush willow. The leaves make a very nice tea in the morning. And inside an elephant's tummy, everything that goes in there ferments into an enormous bowl or batch of tea. All those little different medicinal properties going in. They're very selective in their feeding. They know exactly what they're looking for in the landscape. But I mean, you can see how they've moved. They've moved like, since you've been with us, they've moved about 100 meters. And slowly through the vegetation, just taking little bits at a time. Only leaving a dent on the environment. But as the dry season rolls in, you'll see they're going to make so much more impact as they start to break the trees and really, really start their destructive engineering. That is what they are. They're an ecosystem engineer. They have the ability to change the landscape. Yeah, they disappear into the wilderness, and let's go back up to James and see if he's had any luck.
We have had amazing luck there on the road. As Senzo yawns heavily, is a crested francolin. Wasn't that exciting, Senzo? So exciting that it even arrested your yawn. Let's go a little bit further forward. I also saw a diker, can you believe it, diking through here. Unfortunately, the grass is so long that it has disappeared. And that's the first mammal we've seen today. Yes, our first mammal, a diker. I'm afraid you didn't see it with us. It's back out on the road, Senzo, quickly, before it skedaddles. Eating grass seeds is the crested francolin. Looking rather imperious this morning, I feel. Be pleased with itself, puffed out. Perfunctory peck here and there. There they are, the little family. I actually don't know what their social structure is breeding-wise. Let's have a look-see. But they're the sorts of birds that are just quite fun to sit and watch for a while. They're beautifully disguised there. Now, I was mentioning, of course, there's another one that Senzo was yawning, and some you're aged just 9 years old, and you want to know what time we get up in the morning. Well, Senzo gets up about 2.5 minutes before he has to be on the vehicle. So, we have to be on the car half an hour before we go live. So, in this case, at 5:30, so Senzo gets up at 28.5 minutes past 5. Is that about right, Senzo? Yes. I get up a little earlier than that so that I can make some coffee beforehand. But Ralph also gets up about 4 hours before he has to go on drive. He likes to go and eat quite a lot of food before he goes on drive, and so the first sound in the morning that you hear is not, in fact, the call of the grey-headed sparrow, which is what it used to be. It is now the clink of a spoon on a plate, as Ralph devours a large plate of cornflakes. So it really does depend on the individual. I like to get up, have a coffee and do a bit of writing before I get up, so I get up about 4:30. And some get up a bit later than that. VM, who lives next door to me, gets up much later than that. He also is of the opinion that sort of 2.5 minutes is all you need to get ready. I'm just quickly going to look and check the general, not the general habits, the breeding. They are monogamous, which is interesting. Solitary nesting. Male competes for mates. Okay, so the males, rather like a lot of ground birds around the world, will compete. They probably lek. They probably dance for the females. There we go. So that was a little couple. Oh, they're getting quite close to us. They're stalking us here, Senzo. Look at this. Now, as I was saying, most of these ground birds do a whole lek. So they do these dances. The males do, in order to attract females, and the females then select them. And I think one of those examples, Norman, would be an American sage hen. I think certainly a prairie. There's another bird in America that I've read about that does this. That lives on the prairies. It's called maybe even called a prairie hen. Whether or not they're related to the Franklins, I'm not sure. Because they are separated by the Atlantic Ocean, you'll find that there are families all over the New World that don't exist in the Old World. Grouse, apparently, is what I'm looking for. Thank you, Jared. Prairie grouse, is that correct? So I'm not sure if they're related. I don't think they're... I suspect that they are fairly distantly related. Very nice. We don't often stop and spend time with the humble-crested Franklin as we hare around searching for spotted cats and tawny cats and grey large things with long noses. Now, Michael, I'm going to ask you to ask Ralph that question because he is sitting at Chitwa where we last saw the evoker males. And I have had no word on the radio channel from up north here as to where they may have gone, the evoker males. But perhaps Ralph will have some updates because he is on Chitwa on a different radio channel from the one I'm on. Right, we're heading up now towards Buffelshoek Waterhole, where the world's most boring hippo resides and the world's most entertaining Egyptian goose family also resides. There really are thousands of spiders all over the place here. Many tropical tent web spiders. It's obviously a very successful method of catching things to eat, that net underneath and the knockdown threads. Senzo, you'll be pleased to know, is slowly coming alive. So I'm just going to help him become further alive by driving him through a bush. There's no need for you to watch that, so let's go across to Steve and find out where he's going.
Good morning, Senzo. Okay, so that was awesome. We've moved away from that area of the elephants. But what's always very important when you leave a breeding herd, they move off in one direction, you go the other way. But always bear in mind, there's often one or two bulls that are busy following the herd, busy smelling, trying to find them. And many times people get caught out trying to leave the area where the elephants are, and you suddenly bump into bulls that are come behind. So you should not be surprised. But we didn't find anything. So we're moving away from those ellies. They're all headed towards Treehouse Dam. So if Ralph wants some elephants, that's probably the place he should go to have a look. We're continuing on, see if anything else fresh comes through, but there's always just something so special about finding elephant on foot that really sits so nicely sort of with the soul, you know. They are really, really beautiful, gentle giants. Cody, we call it a breeding herd because within that herd, there's breeding that happens. So it's a family unit. It's not, when you look at a herd of Impala, it's mixed herds. Now we're seeing breeding herds of Impala with the rutting male, because he's mating with that herd. When you see a big herd of buffalo, it's generally called a breeding herd of buffalo, because there's males in breeding with those females, if that makes sense. And the females within a breeding herd are all breeding females. There might be some young males, but the rest of them are actually breeding. I think that's the whole reason. It's also a way of because you can also get a herd of bachelor males. So it's a way of just making sure you understand that there's females involved. As soon as there's female elephants involved, there's a different story when it comes to how you're going to respond or react to those animals, because the females have youngsters. Their behavior can be very different to that of a group of bulls. Bulls don't seem to care too much about your whereabouts or what you're doing. Females, on the other hand, can be. There can always be something. It's very important to understand the difference between a breeding herd and a group of bulls. And then same when it comes to buffalo. A breeding herd of buffalo is much easier to handle than a few bulls. You can ask Rexon if he likes walking into lone buffalo bulls hiding in the long grass, or a breeding herd of buffalo, and I bet you he'd tell you the breeding herd of buffalo, because they respond differently. They've got much more sort of visual and sensory awareness, and they run away, whereas a buffalo bull could just be sitting behind this bush here, and because we're being so quiet, we suddenly materialize in them. So Duggar boys or lone buffalo bulls, we have to be careful of. I'm not saying we don't have to be careful of breeding herds of buffalo, but they generally are quite skittish, and as a group, they run away. So I hope that's answered your ideas there. So it seems like Ralph has got his seatbelt locked in and about to take off on the airstrip, so let's go see what his plans are.
Right, everybody, I just wanted to give you a small feeling of what it's like to take off on a real bush airstrip. If you've ever have done it, you'll know that it's a very unique experience, both taking off and landing on these bush airstrips with the bush aeroplanes, with the bush pilots. It's all a fantastic feeling. So I think we're going to follow this drone as we go up the airstrip, and we're going to have a couple of different perspectives from that. But I would have to say this is going to be wonderful. So let's go to the drone, and then we'll get it from that perspective. Right. So, okay, everybody, this is your captain speaking. Fasten your seatbelts. Yes, it might be a bit of a bumpy takeoff, but oh, shucks. Okay, let's just see. It might be because of this misty climate we're having this morning. A little bit of a misty start, so maybe the signal is a little bit jumpy there, everybody. But nonetheless, don't worry. This flight will still continue along its way. A little bit of bumps here and there never stopped us. Let's see if we come back. Okay, there we are. Okay, everybody, yes, and we're ready for takeoff. Here we go. Got to watch out for those Impala off on the side. Every now and then we do have some guinea fowl that get in the way. And we'll be gaining altitude shortly. And as you lift up, you start to see all the bush and the expanse and the greenness. And then as we circle out and get some altitude, things don't start to smooth out a little bit. We're still heading along the airstrip along the ground. And well, what a wonderful start that is to the flight. Oh, we've got some guinea fowl on the runway. Well, that's it, everyone. No, I haven't been talking too much. I've been concentrating on the flying. Now, that's Seb. He's in the back. He's doing all of that. But, yeah. Nice little different impression that, hey, everyone? It's incredible what the bush pilots can do with those little aeroplanes, those little Cessnas that they fly around. And so I think we're going to slowly make our way back towards the pan, hopefully get a successful landing. But while we do that, let's head on over to James, who I believe is near Buffelshoek.
Well, I'm not near it, I'm at it. I'm at the pea green soup of Buffelshoek Dam. And notice, I have made a comment a little while back about the two Egyptian geese parents living here being the worst parents here. Well, I think I am being borne out. There are the 7 goslings, alone, unattended, unsupervised, and swimming. They were swimming. They've swum the entire length of the waterhole without any supervision. I can see one of the parents way in the distance standing on one leg, giving itself a clean. In fact, I don't even think that's an Egyptian goose. It isn't. It's a thick knee. Where are the parents? Out wassailing. This is what I was talking about, everybody. This kind of really appalling parenting. These children are going to grow up doing exactly what they want, left to their own devices. Now, on a more serious note, I think that this is quite an interesting algal bloom going on here, and I'd love to know from anybody with more knowledge of algae whether we think this is blue-green algae or cyanobacteria, which can be very toxic, or whether it's just garden variety spiruline, spirogyra, and various other green algae, which I don't think are quite so toxic. Now, I mean, if ever there was a picture of an animal to which the theme tune of Jaws should be played, that was it that Senzo had. This little thing all on its own. Something could come up from the deep, something could come up from above, grab it. Who knows? Quickly, swim for the shore, little one. Swim for the shore. And the smell coming off this water is also not very pleasant. There's a gas, definitely a gas coming off this algae that smells quite chemically. It's obviously not chemical. Well, it is chemical, but it's not synthetic. It smells like a bit like rotting spinach. So I'm not sure how healthy it is for the animals that come and drink here. Yes, and Sammy Jane, I agree with you. You said it looks like a thick soup. To me, it looks like pea soup. Thick pea soup. Of the sort my mother might make with the Christmas ham bone once it was finished. Ugh. Let's go back to the goslings, if you don't mind, Senzo. And I was just thinking that they look a lot bigger when they're out the water than when they're in. So Wisteria, I don't think you'll notice a sexual difference in their sizes at the moment. Let's just look at them while they're all standing there. You see, I think they're all a fairly uniform size when they're out of the water. But as soon as they get into the water, they look a lot smaller. They're just starting to get their little Egyptian goose faces now, aren't they? Well, there's obviously something very delicious going on at the shoreline there. One wonders if they just live completely oblivious of the dangers around them. I'm sure they do. I don't think that they look particularly terrified at all. They cannot fly, so they are flightless until they're about 60 days old, if I remember correctly. So for 60 days, their only defense is to get into the water or be protected by their parents. The latter option for these 7, not possible at the moment. And I think they've gone off foraging somewhere. Jeff, you're wondering if perhaps they died while protecting the babies. No, I don't think so. I think it'd be very unusual if both of them had shuffled off this mortal coil at the same time. Because I think the parents were here yesterday evening when Steve came by. See how much smaller they look suddenly when they get in the water. It's so fascinating. I wonder why. I mean, why have they decided now they need to swim across? What is the reason? Maybe they didn't like the company of the blacksmith lapwings. And also wonders if the blacksmith lapwings watch them thinking, shame, I wonder where their parents are. You know, in the same way that you might walk past an orphan in the street, not really stopping to do too much about it, but just wondering, shame, I wonder where the parent is. There they go. Oh, one of them breaking off from the formation. Very strong swimmers. There's something quite peaceful about watching a duck swim. There's also something a little eerie about watching little things like this swim out into the middle of a pea green soup like this. Lucas, I'm afraid I missed that one. I was waffling away. Won't you just give it to me again? I had a question from Jared's buddy. Well, I think that's exactly what seems to be what's happened. Jared's buddy, I don't see any evidence of the hippo here at all. So I think the world's most boring hippo has perhaps decided that this pea green soup is just a bit disgusting for him, and maybe he's headed down to Chitwa, or up into one of the waterholes on Buffelshoek. Oh, they've almost made it to the middle. Now they must go all the way. It is interesting that the adults are not here, and I wonder if something hasn't happened to them. I mean, in the absence of a predator, there's no reason these goslings won't survive to adulthood. You know, they don't need the parents for, you know, to help them with food or maths lessons or homework or anything like that from this age. And that's just what I was wondering myself, Norman. I don't know how they know to stay together or what makes them stay together. See how they've suddenly turned around? I think they came across a large terrapin under the water there. I don't know how they know to stay together, or if they know to stay together, or what made them get into the water and swim all the way across. See, they are moving with a speed now. They did not like the sight of that big terrapin, I think they saw. I think terrapins are potential predators for these chaps. Going to come up from the deep and grab one, pull them under. Good luck, little geese. You get out there. Ask the thick-knee to look after you. Look for your parents. Right, while they have a little dry off, let's go back to Steve Ovo and find out what he's up to and where his elephants have gone.
Well, the Ellies have moved off. Well, we've moved off from the Ellies as well. We didn't want to have any more interaction with them on foot. We have stopped at a Facebook notice board in the bush, an Impala midden with a whole lot of forbs and herbs coming out of it. And this is the time of the year where the Impala are communicating through dung. Here is the dung piles and also the urine. There's the urine there. So the males are securing these small territories. The females are defecating and urinating on the same spot as the male, and then he comes around and he sniffs the urine. He does that funny thing with the lip, and he knows if the females are in estrus. And last night, the first full moon, and the next full moon in 29 days, it is going to be absolute chaos for the next few weeks, as all the females are going to be in estrus, all the males are going to be vying for their attention, and these are the signal posts for all of that. And now, you must wonder, what is the purpose of a midden like this? And now, first of all, I think Impala are quite clever, because by defecating in one spot like this, is actually a nutrient hotspot that occurs here, like an overdose of nitrogen. You can see that nothing grows for quite some time in the circle of the hotspot. It almost burns the soil. So this hotspot is in one place, in a number of places around, but it's not everywhere. And there's a lot of animals, and sable antelope is one of them, that defecates all over the place. And through sable breeding, people have realized that the sables, because they're being bred in smaller pens, they're defecating and then they're feeding on the grass where they've defecated, and they're getting internal parasites and worms. So whether Impala know that defecating in one spot is also minimizing the chances of them ingesting worms through their diet, I don't know. Maybe it's purely just because of the signaling. This is where my spot is, this is where we defecate, this is where the urine goes, and this is where I check your Facebook status, so to speak. But these are all over the place, very small, all over, but these little hot spots of nitrogen and nutrients in one spot. Very, very interesting. Posterior does look like stones, but it's not. And for Chris, here's my poo. Chris loves to take photos of me in poo. This is Impala dung, and it is still quite wet. And break it open, you can see the digestive system of the ruminant. And this time of year, if you probably did an analysis of that, you'd find it would be probably primarily grass inside. I can't see any leaf material, but it's very, very finely chopped. And that is it, Impala dung, very, very small. It's got a nice aroma to it, very nice. Okay, so we are going to continue on from our Impala discussion, but this is the time of year where you're going to hear lots and lots about Impala information. Clarel, there's the full moon and the males rutting. It's a combination of the two. I'm not 100% sure how it works, but the full moon period causes the males come into the rut, and that they make induces the ovulation. And within this 29-day sort of cycle, all the females, well, almost all of them, will be impregnated, which means that 6 months later they all drop their lambs. 6.5 months later they all drop their lambs, pretty much within a couple of weeks of each other. That's their strategy, that's how they've evolved to do it, and that's why, one of the reasons why they're so successful. But it's a combination of the full moon and the gurgling that actually induces. I think red deer in the States also do that roar, and that causes ovulation of the females. Well, it seems as if Ralph has landed. I'm not sure what he's doing. Let's go have a look.
Well, we're just heading down back towards Twin Dams, maybe continue on towards Treehouse Dam after our lovely little flight there. A little bit of action and flight simulation over Chitwa and Chitwa Dam specifically at the Airstrip. So now it's back to business. Let's go look for some animals. I really want to see some elephants. I know you guys have seen some elephants, but that's what I would like to see. I haven't seen any since I've been back, and well, they are one of my favorite sort of soul animals, if I can say that. My spiritual animal, I would say, is definitely to be in the presence of elephants is one of the most amazing experiences. I would say to being in the water, being near to dolphins or whales, very intelligent animals and a very large presence, and not only intellectually but also physically. So it's quite special always when you're in the presence of elephants. But that doesn't mean that that's our only focus. We'll be looking for all sorts. Okay, we might lose signal, so let's head you off to Djuma.
Did you manage to find out from Ralph what happened to the Avoca males? I would be most interested to know. I suspect they've headed north from where they were. And I believe that Ralph's signal is not very good. I can hear a sighting going on Buffalo's Hook, which is the reserve to the north of us, and I'm wondering perhaps if they didn't head up there. That would have been the logical thing for them to do once they'd advertised their presence. Oh, look at that. Senzo, an actual mammal. Can you believe it? It's something David will be unfamiliar with from the Mara. A Nyala. They think David's very fetching, see? Very nice. Gorgeous colour. They're looking down into this little river valley. I will find out for you on the radio exactly what is going on there while you look at these Nyala. Unfortunately, the volume that people are screaming into the radio at is making my brain explode. They look a little bit uneasy, but I mean they never look particularly like they're about to fall asleep. Orbs, come in. I'm just talking on the Game Drive radio. Sorry, what animals are those at Sussens Dam? Oh, it's wild dogs, everybody. Copy, thanks. It's not the lions. I don't know where the lions have gone. They will be very pleased, these Nyala, that the wild dogs are way up north, as opposed to around here. Let's just sit for a little while and listen. I've done a lot of sitting and listening today, and very little alarm from any animal. So everybody seems quite at peace on Monday morning. Unlike my friends in Johannesburg, which won't be at peace at the moment. Imagine my brother on his way to work in his bank, listening to people phone into the radio talk shows, spouting all sorts of utter garbage. And here we are sitting with some Nyala. In peace and quiet. These little twitching of the nose to smell, ears moving like satellite dishes. One of the big sounds, of course, that everyone is hearing at the moment is the sound of the rutting Impala. And Carol, that is a uniquely Impala thing. There is a peak of breeding for all of the antelope species, but none of them have a synchronized breeding and mating quite like the Impala, and they will all try and peak their calving or lambing seasons around the rains, around the peaks of the rain, so sort of around December, January time. And of course, because they're all different sizes, they have different gestation periods, which means that the rutting and breeding seasons will be different for all of them. A kudu has a gestation period, if I'm not mistaken, of almost 9 months. And so they will breed probably around about, probably February, March time. It won't be nearly as synchronized as the Impala. The Nyala, similar kind of gestation to the Impala, so you might see them attempting to breed around this time of year. Certainly Steve had some the other day. It's really very, very pretty Nyala sighting. It's an interesting one. Can we see it again there? I think it's gone behind that weeping wattlebush. YouTube viewer, here she's coming out. I think they do all have the same spot pattern on their face as YouTube viewer, within reason. they go. Let's look. We've had 2 of them. It's 1, 2, 3. I've actually never thought about that. They're 1, 2, 3 on that one on the right-hand side of the face. I wonder if you couldn't perhaps identify individual nyalas. They can't be exactly the same. I mean, that would be ridiculous. You wouldn't expect them to be exactly the same at all. Maybe the number's the same though. Okay, so she's got 2 there. Could you turn your face the other way, please? No, more. More. Just a little bit more. Look behind you. Now those 2 there that she has just below her nose are perfectly lined up, so they are the same. I don't know. Certainly be something to watch out for. Oh, I think that Steve has got something that is very, very cross indeed.
Indeed. Here's to your Monday morning smiley face. I'm sure a lot of people who have to go to work on a Monday morning have a look like this after a long weekend. Oh, actually, it's a public holiday today. I forget. If you're working on a public holiday today, I'm sure that is the look you would be giving. But Vulture and I don't have grumpy faces. We love being out in the bush. And indeed, ladies and gentlemen, we have found... Oh, the public holiday is tomorrow? Okay, well, I have no doubt a lot of people are taking today off anyway, in South Africa, that is. But here we've got the bush-veld rain frog. And when we first saw him, he was moving quite quickly. And now he has realized he's been spotted. And he's very happy about that. The call goes something like that. Very interesting that they are out and about still. They normally emerge after rain, hence the name rain frog. He could, pangolin, he could strike at any moment. It is a very dangerous looking individual. I'm only joking, but if you have a look at sort of the legs, is he going to move a little bit for us? You can see his legs and his body is quite rotund, so he's not able to wrap himself around when he meets a partner. So what these guys actually do is they adhere themselves. They give off a glue type substance on their belly, which enables them to glue themselves to the female's back. So that he ensures mating with her, because frogs have what we call external fertilization. They don't actually physically mate. The female will lay the eggs, and then he'll deposit his sperm on top of the eggs that she lays. And obviously if he's not right there when she deposits the eggs, he can't ensure that he fertilizes them. So by doing that, he adheres himself with the glue substance to her body and will not let go until the deed is done. And then I think he gives off some other weird substance that enables him to sort of melt that glue off. That is purely an evolutionary response, because he doesn't have the legs capable of going all the way around. Some frogs wrap right around sort of the shoulders here underneath, and some just come around the hips, called inguinal clasp, and I forget the other one. Anyway, amplexus is the term of frogs sticking together for mating. Now it's very interesting. In frogs, you get lots of different calls. Martini, yes, he looks very sad. It's just the way they look, I'm afraid. But frogs have got many, many calls, and one of the very important ones that a frog has is called the release call. Because what often happens in frenzies of mating and finding mates and finding partners is males sometimes clasp other males. And once they clasp, it's like a pit bull with its jaws locking that does not let go. So if a male suddenly clasps another male, the male immediately lets off a release call, and that male quickly lets go. Otherwise he's going to be attached to another male, and the chances of him depositing his sperm onto the eggs of a female are very, very hard. Pangolin, this frog makes only one call that I know of, and it goes kind of says his name. Bush, veld, rain, frog. He's very cool. Very, very cool. And he's a little guy. He's only a youngster. He's probably newly hatched this season. And he's puffed himself up to make him look even more formidable. I love these guys. I love these guys. Well, that's it for him. We're going to move on. Continue on. Look how he moves. He's actually very quick for such a small little critter. And he stopped moving. Marco, I think they do bury themselves. As soon as sort of the season changes, they'll find themselves going into the soil. But after rain, they emerge. So I'm guessing that they do hide themselves in the soil when it's not wet. But that's not a bullfrog. Bullfrogs have the capability of completely encapsulating themselves in sort of like a membrane and then going into complete sort of torpor, we call it, sort of like hibernation in insects, in reptiles. And they just sort of disappear in that, and they can go in the bottom of a muddy pond, and then when the season changes again, out they come again. But I don't think these guys do that. But I'm not 100% sure. Not 100% sure. Marvellous Vildy. Yeah, well, it seems as James is having all the animals this morning. Let's go see which antelope he has this time.
All of them, we've got all of them, and they've all just disappeared. There's a kudu there. Don't know if you can see it. Very nice way to sort of relate to the nyala we had earlier. Its very big cousin, the kudu. She's a very elegant lady, that. She's got a quite nice lipstick, you see that, Senzo? She wears white lipstick. She's quite a sort of risque, modern. Alright, apparently these kudu are not managed to catch the quarry that he has sought, I nearly said seeked, for so long.
Look at this, everyone. It looks like this elephant was just about to push the tree over, but how wonderful is that? That's exactly what I was looking for. We catch up with some elephants, and we came to Treehouse Dam, and it seems this little breeding herd, I'm not sure if it's the same group that was with Steve earlier on, but they've just been for a drink at Treehouse Dam, and we arrived as they were leaving, so they are sort of heading a little bit down the road back towards Twin Dams. But this one looks quite intent on pushing that, looks like a silver cluster leaf over. I'm not sure why, unless it wants to get to the fruits or the seeds that are on it at the moment, or if it's just having a scratch. Sometimes they do have a bit of a scratch and they end up pushing the tree over. You see, that's quite intent on pushing that particular one there. Yeah, oh, there we go. Oh, look at the strength of it, eh? So easy. Just maybe moving it out the way.
This program features live coverage of an African safari and may include...
That's it. All the way down, not halfway. Now let's see what she does. Is she going to feed on the end of it? I might move forward in a minute and just get a little bit closer. I think let's do that, Seb. Let's get a bit closer and have a look. She's got a little baby with her, so we don't want to get too close. She will let us know if we are too close, so always just watch her body language. But we've got elephants on the left and right of us, so we just keep our eyes out and not... Okay, and sorry about that, everybody. There was a little bit of a glitch in the FC, the gremlins and the technical difficulties striking again, but I think it's probably all back in order now. There she is. That's great. She is now feeding there nicely on that. And yeah, she wanted to get to those nice juicy leaves at the top. On a silver cluster leaf once again, so that must be making her mouth rather dry. There's been a couple of animals now feeding on these silver cluster leaves that I've spotted lately. Mostly the Impala and now the elephant. Zenalia, wonderful. Thanks for sending through your question to us, Zenalia. An elephant baby, they generally, they can use, well, the muscles are there in their trunk pretty much from when they're born, but they only get to work out exactly how to use their trunk at about a year plus. So from 1 year old, after that, then you can see they're actually able to suck up water and spray it into their mouth. Before then, it's like a bit of a fire hydrant that's out of control. They don't know whether to blow or to suck, and when they do get some water up into their trunk, well, it gets sprayed all over the place, and generally nothing goes in the mouth. So it's quite difficult, and up until that point, they're also exclusively drinking from mum. Once they, and I mean suckling, drinking milk, and once they get use of the trunk and they work it out, then they can start to feed on little bits of grass and some leaves, etc. But they still also then are drinking at the same time, and slowly but surely they weaned off the milk from mom, and they move on to the vegetation diet. Their mom expertly using her trunk. I would say that this little youngster here is not, he's not under a year. He would be over a year. It's possibly about 2 years old, that one. They're very easy to identify when they've got those ears that cross over on the top of the head. That means that it's a very young one. And this one, you see that they very much shifted down the side of the head. Well, they are touching if he throws it back. So I would say maybe between a year and 2 years, this one. He's got the use of his trunk, obviously throwing a bit of soil and dust on himself. So definitely over a year. Still just hiding himself a little bit behind the thicket there. Lawrence, I definitely do think that elephants know when they are pregnant. You do sort of see Lauren, sorry, not Lawrence, Lauren, that was answering your question. I definitely do believe that they know when they're pregnant. Their behavior does change slightly, as it does with humans, because obviously with the onset of being pregnant, there's a lot of change in hormones within the body, and often you can get very grumpy female elephants, and sometimes I'm pretty sure that it's down to them being pregnant and them having different hormonal imbalances, etc., as that starts working through. And obviously much later on, yes, they also would go off and separate themselves from the herd, etc. So I think there's a definite big build-up towards that giving birth. It's obviously a bit longer than humans, but I do think psychologically they understand it, and they feel it, and they do work with it. Now, loose, yes, there would definitely be a part of the brain that controls the trunk of elephants. It's like humans, where we do have a neurological sort of center which controls a lot of what we do in movements. So it's obviously coming up the back of the head. You know, a lot of that nervous system entering into the brain. Like with us, we've got our longest nerve being the sciatic nerve running down the side of our body from the tip of our toe all the way up into the base of our skull, and they would also have those neurological nerve endings entering into the brain, and obviously sending the signals down to the trunk, and vice versa. When it feels anything, then that center would be heading up through the spinal column into the brain. So I think let's move forward a little bit again. And it's just, the rest of them are moving down through the drainage line. So, from one animal playing with trees while I relocate, let's head on over to another playing in the tree.
Hello everybody. I can't tell if Senzo is being serious or not when he says we're live. I stopped at this tree because, well, like with most of the trees out here, it's starting to realize that the day length has changed and it's going to lose all its foliage. But look at the strange phenomenon here. I thought initially that it was a mistletoe growing on the end of this branch, but it isn't. It's just a really thick part of the same tree. Isn't that amazing? So I climbed up here to see if I could maybe find what had caused the problem or caused the change and the difference, and I can't see anything. It's an entire branch that is kind of curled around itself, and it just seems to be much more productive than any of the others. It is also a nice excuse to warm up with some tree climbing. Okay. Right, I should probably get out now. So this tree, of course, is Combretum herreriense, or the russet bush willow. And most of them, as I said, will be starting to lose their leaves now. But this one has a very, very exuberant, verdant patch. I wonder what has caused it to grow such. I'm fairly sure that nobody knows. Senzo, did you see how elegantly I climbed out of the tree? Yes, good. He says, huh? Oh, just how you taught me. Thank you very much. Yes, apparently Senzo taught me to climb trees. I don't remember the lessons, but I'm sure he's not lying. David is back on the car now. That's good, David. He will, of course, also have to climb trees now. Robert, it is Homo sapiens as far as I can tell. Wondering which species of ape we are. That is what we are. Interestingly, although we are in a different genus from the chimpanzees and bonobos, I'm led to believe that that is largely a function of the fact that we as human beings don't want to be considered in the same genus as they are, and that we probably, strictly speaking, should be in the same genus. Senzo's found a friend, everybody. Come on. That's it. This is a rather fascinating creature. And this fascinating creature is a katydid. But most katydids are very green. And the reason I call it a katydid is because of that very long ovipositor coming out of its bottom. You see that? That's ovipositor, and basically just means egg deposit mechanism. And I would have said she was a youngster, except that she's got fully formed wings, which, as far as I understand, means that she must be an adult. So she's in the same order as the crickets and the grasshoppers. Very angry battling testiculars around here. And drongos. It's interesting. Tim, apparently your comment about this katydid is that it's a katydidn't. Anyway, the ovipositor is used to drill a hole into the ground and lay the eggs there. And so I think we should probably return her. Senzo, unless are you taking her home with you? We can release her, can we? That's very kind of you. Let's put her on a piece of grass over here. There you are, my dear. May you lay many eggs with your ovipositor. No, you cannot come home with me. No. Come on now. You and I must lead different lives now, from this time onwards. Be brave. Go forth. Be wonderful. Don't forget to brush your teeth. Good. Okay. We're now going down into the central regions to see if we can't find ourselves some more mammals. Ooh. No, those are hyenas. We have a number of evergreen species here, and I think, Robert, you were alluding to evergreen species, is that correct? Lucas? Correct. Number of evergreen species. We have here the magic guarri being the most obvious one. I think the gymnosporias are also the spike thorns. For me, what's more interesting is those trees that are semi-deciduous. So they sometimes lose their leaves, and they lose their leaves at odd times of the year when they can escape competition from other trees that are just trying to sort of flush in spring. And the jackalberry or ebony tree would fall into that category. We're now in central Djuma, in this gorgeous little valley here, where the signal is not very good. So let's go back to Ralph and his elephants.
Yes, well, we're still sitting here with the elephants. We've just gotten a better position just to be a little bit around on the other side of them. Now, these two little youngsters that we've got just on the right there, they've been wrestling and pushing and shoving each other. And just a moment ago, that female, just off on the left, she came in and almost went right in between them, and just to say, you know what, that's enough. And it looks like she's going off to do it again. So I think she's getting a bit irritated with these youngsters. And there we have another female coming through. A little set of tusks on her. Not a very big set, but tusks all the same. At least she's got those extra tools to be able to access bark in the winter times when the other resources are very low. I think I'm just going to reverse a little bit just to get a better view on them. Let me just see forward first. There we go, actually. Jody, that's a very good question. Can elephants breathe through their mouth? Yes, they can, but you won't find them doing it regularly. And I know that very well because obviously their trunk is like an extension of their nose. So it's all connected. They can breathe in and out through their mouth. But I know it very personally as well because we had some vets that came and did some very interesting procedures on elephants that we had on a game reserve that I was working on. But the anaesthetist, he had these big pipes down the mouth of the elephant, and he was just topping it up with some oxygen because when they're under anesthetic, he says that they still do breathe, but they can become a little bit lazy because of their heavy weight, and so they can slowly but surely breathe less and less. And so if you don't top them up, they can lose out on a little bit of oxygen. So they put the pipe down through the mouth, not through the trunk, down through the mouth, and they were just topping him up with a little bit of oxygen like that, keeping him